Also, as a reminder, for more Microsoft Webcasts, you can visit microsoft.com/webcast. And again, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's Msdn Webcast, Windows Eventing and Windows Server 2008. And now, without any further delay, I'm going to turn the floor over to today's presenter, William Steele.
Thank you, Tracy, and welcome everybody. This is actually the title changed because of a recent announcement that we had. Actually, it's been a while, but we posted this deck out there quite a bit ago. This is the Longhorn Server Windows Eventing Webcast. And today, basically, I'm going to be talking about some of the new features, not necessarily any of the older stuff, but all the new features that are available in Windows Server 2008 in the Windows Eventing model. So if you need to get a hold of me at any time, you can go ahead and contact me through my blog, blogs.msdn.com/wsteele. There's a contact me link on the left-hand side of the page there that'll actually punch right through our protection mechanism, so you can actually send me an email there if you need to. What we're going to cover is actually the improvements in the Windows Eventing model, and then we'll take a look at those improvements, specifically in the manifest creation, how we actually create our event, basically, and then how we actually compile it and install that event. And then we'll go ahead and take a look at how we consume that event through our eventing APIs. So there's basic 3 sections that we're going to be looking at today. Well, starting off, let's take a look at the improvements in the Windows Eventing model. First and foremost is the PowerShell integration. You're going to see me doing quite a bit of stuff through PowerShell or a command shell in either case. It makes no difference in the way we do it. But when we do when we're dealing with events, we're going to be dealing with some command-based stuff so that we can actually create our event, compile it, and install it basically. With command line utilities. So we're also going to see how we can do that with our code-based, with the installer-based utilities at the end of the day. Something else I want to point out is that building our events, building our manifests, we are going to be dealing with XML-based files, so we can actually, use a declarative markup to describe what our event looks like. And then lastly, I'll show you some of the new event viewer stuff. We do have some modifications to the event viewer that allow us to utilize these events a little bit more efficiently. So starting off, let's take a look at creating an event. When we create an event, we need to start off by defining or having some object that contains all of the information about this event, the configuration and things like that. And we do that through what we call a manifest file. Now, the manifest basically describes all the parameters that we're going to deal with when we're using these events or creating or setting up these events. It's going to contain things like the configuration. It's also going to contain, the simple stuff like the descriptions that we're going to use and what, how we display these events. For example, when I'm using the event viewer, what does it look like in the event viewer? Well, we have full control over how it's displayed. Lastly, it's going to contain the parameters that we use to pass into that. So when I build my first event here, we're going to pass in a parameter into it that we're going to use to help describe the event that occurred. A couple other things that we're going to see in these manifests are things like where the event comes from, the event sources, and where it's actually logged to, which log files do you want to record this event in. So we can define those event logs and event sources right from within the manifest file. So let's go ahead and jump early into this, right into a demonstration by creating a manifest. And then we'll be using that manifest throughout the rest of our demos today. In order for you to view my screen correctly, my screen resolution is set to 1024 by 768. So if your resolution is set to that or higher, you should be able to press the F5 key within your live meeting console to maximize your display to the full, to my full screen. And then when I'm done with the demo, you can press the F5 key again, and that'll restore it back to the standard live meeting console window. As with all my other webcasts, you're welcome to answer or ask questions at any time simply by using the question manager. And once I'm done with each one of the demos, I will review any of the questions that are in there and answer them verbally. So let's pop into a demo. And what you see on my desktop here is a a Visual Studio environment. In Visual Studio here, I have a project open called the Dinner Now Web Management project. And this is basically a web manager for the Dinner Now demo application. And what we're going to do today is we're going to go ahead and install and create a new event that we're going to then consume with the Event Viewer application at the end of the day. So starting off with, what we're going to look at is how we actually define the events. And we're going to do that in the manifest. Now the manifest file is an XML-based file. And here you can see the Dinner Now Web Events manifest. And these are the events that are actually in here by default. There's going to be several. Whoops. We have a. Well, let me restore this. My virtual session kind of crashed on me, or reset on me. So let me restore this. That'll take just a second here. Let's see here. There we go. So let me hide some of these windows here, and so you can see my actual file. Okay, so here is our manifest file, and you can see it is a standard XML document. There are several things inside here. First off, there's a provider in here, and the provider actually defines who's actually, providing the functionality for these events. And you can see that we have a Dinner Now Web Events DLL as the provider for our entire Fabricam Dinner Now website. And that's using this symbol here. We can see the provider's Dinner Now. It's basically a service that we're using. Some of the other things that we note inside here is that there are templates, and these templates inside here actually define the different types of events that can occur. Each one of these represents, a different type of an event that this application developer wanted to use. So in our case, we're trying to use the, let me scroll this over there so you can see all of it. They're trying to use, here's a user registration event, so it's going to create an event when a user registers. There's some exceptions and configuration errors and things like that. Well, I'm going to go ahead and create a new template that we're going to use for our own event. And the event that we're going to create is, we're just going to call this a template, and you can see that I have full IntelliSense here. We're going to create a duplicate user event. And basically what this is going to do is we're going to call this duplicate user template. And when a user tries to register to this website, if the user name already exists, it's going to go ahead and create this event for us and allow us to monitor when that occurs. So I'm going to go ahead and set up some values here. We'll set up some data values here. We're going to pass in a username. That's going to be the parameter that we're going to be using. And the type of parameter that it's going to be is simply going to be a Windows a Unicode string. string. So there, that's a parameter that we're going to be using. And also I'll go ahead and set up some user data here. And our user data is actually going to contain things like the namespace and the actual parameters itself. So let's go ahead and set up a duplicate user event. And XML namespace, define the namespace we're using for this guy. Manifest. Fabricam is our fictitious website that we're using. And Dinner Now Web is the actual website that we're dealing with. So now what I have is a duplicate user event that actually has been set up. The only thing that we're missing now is we're missing that one last field that contains the parameter that we're going to be sticking in there. So we're going to go ahead and pass this parameter called username, and that's going to be represented by the first parameter that we pass into it. So now I have a template that defines my event that I'm going to be raising. We're going to call this the duplicate user template. And we're going to, whenever we need to raise that, this is the template that it's going to use to actually define that event. Okay, so the other thing that we need to do is we actually need to go down, farther down into this file, and you'll see farther down in here we have this group called events. In this section called events, these have all of the events that are actually registered in this application. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add another node at the end here that's actually going to contain the event that we're going to be adding. So our event is going to be, you can see we have different fields here. The first one that we're going to pass in is the symbol. The symbol is actually basically the text that uniquely identifies it. So duplicate So here I have a duplicate user event, and that's the event that we're going to respond to. We'll define its level. We want this to be an error message, so we're going to tell it that it's an error. And we're going to assign a value to it. The value is actually the error number. And you can see I'm actually assigning my own error number to this. So my error number is going to be 7001. Setting that up allows me to basically raise, if you will, a particular error. Whenever I raise the value 7001, it's going to throw this duplicate user event message. We'll go ahead and set up a version. This is our first version of it, so we don't need to worry about anything else. Now, we also need to have a channel. And the channel is actually is basically saying, hey, where is this coming from? This is from our application. And which task is occurring while this error is occurring? The registration task. And what that means is that the user was trying to register when this event occurred. So we can actually track that. Then the next thing I want to set up is the template. Now the template is the one that I just defined above there, which happened to be the duplicate user template. Now what that's saying is that, hey, whenever we need to raise this event or whenever we need to deal with it, we're going to use this template to describe that event. And then the last thing that we're going to do in this event definition is we're going to define a message for the users. So what do we want this message to be? Well, in our case, we're going to have a dynamic message because it's going to take a parameter. So what I'm going to need to do is have basically a pointer to another place where I can actually get the message. So here I have a pointer to where that other message is going to be. So in this case, I'm actually pointing to my string resource file, and the resource that I'm going to be using is this resource right here. Now, where do those resources come from? Well, right down here. Here we can see our resource file, and we can see I'm looking for a particular string, and that string happens to be right here. And we'll just go down to the bottom down here, and we'll go ahead and add a new string. Make sure I type in the right one. I just copy the old one there. And we'll set up a value for this guy. So a duplicate user already exists with the name %1. Remember, %1 is the parameter that I actually specified. And that's going to be the username up above. So whenever it sees that, it's going to go ahead and replace that. So there I have my event duplicate user error message, which is actually going to get plugged into this event whenever we use that, which is naturally then going to be stuffed into this template for any time we want to view that. Okay, so let me go ahead and save that file. So there we've defined our event. Now defining our event isn't the end of it. We actually need to do a few other things to make sure that what we actually get is what we really need. So I'm going to go ahead and drop out to a command shell real quick. And in my command shell, I'm actually going to switch to a directory where I can test this out, make sure I can compile it. Labs, server, eventing, start building. Okay. And I'm going to use what we call our message compiler, which is actually going to compile that manifest into a something that we can actually use, basically a resource. So to do that, I'm going to use MC, which is our message compiler, and we're going to set the source file, which is going to be the program files. Now to drill all the way down into this. Microsoft SDKs, Windows. Make sure we get the right version. And then which file are we compiling? The file that we're compiling is, actually I need to drill all the way around. So make sure we have, let's see, the project now. That's the Dinner Web Management, so it's Dinner Now Web Management. And there, we're going to compile. We'll compile that manifest file that I just modified, and we're going to use the Win metadata XML file that actually is provided with the SDK. And if all goes well, it should not give me any errors, and that's exactly what it did. So now if we look inside here, we can see that it's created a header file and a couple other files here for us. These are going to this is going to be the information that we need now to actually build a resource file. So I'm just going to compile this now with the resource compiler. Dinner Now Web Events.rc. And there we go. It has no problem with that, so it's created an updated resource file for me. And then lastly, we'll go ahead and link that into there. So we'll do a link. We're going to link that to a DLL with a Windows subsystem here. And it's in a library, so we don't need an entry point. The machine that we're going to be using is an x86-based machine. So now that I have that, Dinner Now Web, we'll just go ahead and compile those resources. And now I have everything that I need to actually create that. So if we actually go back and look at that project where we were at, it actually has created the assembly DLL that we need to actually link into or utilize basically from any event viewer or anything that we're going to be doing in the future. So at this point, what we've done is we've modified the manifest file. The manifest file, we added the event itself. We added a template for that event, and we also added a message for it. And then I used the standard tools that we use for compiling resources or building resources to actually create and link in this event into the rest of the application. This has created an assembly for us that we're now going to be able to use in the next demos to raise this event and respond to this event. So let me go ahead and pop into here. All right. Okay. Now let's talk about taking that event now and compiling it and installing it. Basically, the way we're going to do that is, again, we're going to use the command shell. We're going to use a tool called the Windows Event Command Line Utility. And the Windows Event Command Line Utility is going to allow us to basically take that event and install it using the manifest file that we created a little bit ago, or we modified a little bit ago. Once we do that, we can then optionally use the install utility to actually install this. For example, you might want to use a command line to install the event, or you might want to have a setup file. So you want to be able to install the file along with the deployment of your application, which is entirely a valid thing to do. By utilizing the installation utility or the Windows Event utility, you can actually then build it and then which will allow you to consume it. So again, we're going to pop back over into a demo real quick here, and we're going to take that manifest that we just created, and we're going to use a command line tool to actually deploy that manifest and then check to make sure that it's a valid installation. And then later on, we're going to go ahead and automate that by using the installer utility here. So back over into our demo here, back to our command line here. Oops, I kind of hidden it. What we're going to do is we're going to use that Windows Event command line utility, which happens to be WEVT util. And we're going to go ahead and basically install that using the manifest file that we created. So start source solution. There's the subdirectory, and then the manifest file itself is web events. Okay. Now, that's actually installed that event, so we can actually start playing around with it. To do that, before we do that, let's go ahead and validate it, make sure it's actually there. And again, we're going to use that same utility. This is actually going to list out all of the events that we have. Here's the service that we are running, and we're going to check to see which ones are operational. And as I hit enter, you can see it's actually going to go through here and tell us enabled equals true. So we are listening for that particular event. And that's the one I added. So we can also validate this in another way. Much easier way is just to run the event viewer. So we'll just launch the event viewer here. And if I go into Actions and I create a new custom view, it's going to give me a dialog box that allows me to pick the view that I want to use. I'm going to choose by source. And when I choose by source, it's going to populate the event sources. If we scroll down through here, we should be able to see the Dinner Now web event. And now that I have that, I can also go through here and actually check the different categories. Here you can see that registration category that I added. So we're going to check for that. And then once I have that, I know my code is in there because there weren't really any others in there. But we might do, a database, checking for the network, or whatever you want to do. You just pick the events that you want to look for. But in this case, we can see that we are now responding to registration events for the Dinner Now web, so it did install that successfully. Now, I'm going to do one other thing, because we're going to actually install this in a different way in the next step here. We're actually going to build an installer into our application so that we can install it without having to deal with the command line utility. So I'm going to go ahead and uninstall that. Actually, I think I might be able to do it this way. Move the cursor back fast enough. So instead of installing it, we're going to uninstall it. Okay. So there I've just uninstalled that. Let's go to Visual Studio now. And in Visual Studio, what we're going to do is we're going to move away from that. Notice that we have the Event Installer class. This is a C# file. The C#, help if I did a view code on it. The C# class here is a class that allows me to actually specify the installation of it, of our event. And we have an install Dinner Now event source method in here. Our case, it's empty. You can see that we have full access to the event path. And what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and type in some code here that's going to allow us to install this using code as opposed to having to do it the manual way from the command prompt. So I'm going to define a couple things here real quick here. We're going to have a path for our manifest file. And that path is actually going to be a simple system.io.path.combine. We're going to combine the target directory with our actual Dinner Now manifest file. So what this is doing is it's just creating a path to that particular that location of that file right there. We're going to have another one that we're going to call the get the thing to work there, our resource path. So instead of being the Dinner Now manifest, it's actually going to be our Dinner Now web events, Dinner Now web events DLL, which is actually going to be the assembly location that we're going to be registering itself. So this is the actual DLL that we're going to be registering. So by having this, I can now go ahead and start setting things up. And remember, we're dealing with XML, so I'm going to go ahead and create an XML document. The document is actually going to contain the items that we're going to be dealing with here today. So a new XML document. Let's see, let me do this again. EW. There we go. So this XML document, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and load our manifest into this XML document. So I can call the load method right on the XML document and give it the manifest file location. So basically what I created a DOM and I loaded that manifest into that DOM. Now that I have that, I can go ahead and automatically, or I should say, code-wise, start modifying this DOM to contain additional elements. So here's a get elements by tag name method that I'm going to use to actually find the provider tag. Now our provider tag actually returns multiple providers, so I need to actually filter that down to just the provider I'm looking for, and it happens to be the first one in the array, if you will. I'll get my cursor to work here. Now what am I going to do with that? I'm going to go ahead and stick that inside a new XML node. So XML.xml node. And we're going to call this node the provider. So there I've grabbed the provider node out of the manifest file and I stuck it inside a provider element here. Now that I have that, I can start playing around with it. For example, I can go ahead and set some attributes on it. The attributes that we're going to set are going to be a new resource location, and you can probably guess when we actually created this, I'm going to take this resource path DLL, and I'm going to go ahead and assign it to the manifest file's provider model or provider location. So I now have basically added my own DLL as a provider to my resource file. In addition to actually setting the resource itself, we also need to set up a few other things. For example, we have the message file name as a item in there. That's where the message information is going to come from itself, as well as any of the parameters that we're going to add. So parameters. So we have a parameter file name as well that we're setting. And they're all being set to the same DLL, which is that compiled version of my code that I just had there. So we're setting the actual resource, the message, and the parameters all to the same DLL because that DLL contains all of that information. Now that I have that, I can go ahead and tell that document to go ahead and save itself back out to the manifest path that we had there. So basically that's going to overwrite the elements that were in there before by adding itself to it. And then the last thing I'm going to do is go ahead and have it execute that same command, the Windows Event utility that we did before, but I'm going to do it from code. So we can do this over and over. So we'll set up a path statement similar to the way we set up the paths above. So we're going to combine our directory, which is, in our case, isn't going to be the directory of our application we were using, the target directory above, but instead is actually going to be the environment's system directory. If I spelled it correctly, environment's system directory, because that's the location of that file. And then the file is going to be the Windows Event ev Windows event.exe file. So basically, this is just giving us a path that contains the location of that executable. And now that I have that, I can go ahead and tell that process to run. So I'm going to use a little tool called the System Diagnostics Process Starter. And then go ahead and give it which process I want to start, which is the that guy. And then go ahead and give it some parameter information. We want to install the manifest. So there it's going to go ahead and construct that manifest file for us. And we'll go ahead and put a literal in there to get the final parentheses in. Final quote in, I should say. So there, what it's going to do is it's going to go ahead and execute this tool, give it the install, and install the manifest path that it actually had there. So now, by doing that, let's make sure I can build this and I can compile. I don't have any errors in my code. Okay, build succeeded. That's good. Okay, so what I've done is I've just installed that. And now what I want to do is go ahead and run the installer utility to actually install this assembly that I just built. So we're going to change back to our, let's see where are we at here. We're eventing. Let's go to start. Copy my sample dinner now out. So I just created this DLL. I'm going to copy it over the previous DLL that I was just playing with. So we're going to copy that over the Dinner Now Web Management DLL. So that's going to replace the DLL that I had in the directory with this new one that I just created that has the ability to install itself. And then I'm just going to go ahead and run the install utility. Specify the target directory. This is a long directory because of everything that's in here. Starting the source solution, and then we're going to go ahead and copy it to there. And Dinner Now Web Management. The bin directory, we're going to actually send it right to the debug directory. DLL. All right, transaction installed and completed. So basically what that has just done is that's installed the new one, and now we can go back to the event viewer. Remember, I removed it earlier, so if I use this tool, I removed it, so we shouldn't see that, but I reinstalled it, so the reinstallation should still show Dinner Now. And there we see it. So in this demo, we've actually seen the installation of this Dinner Now DLL in two different ways. We saw it from the command line, and we also saw it from the executable tool, the installer that I actually built in C# in this particular case. So in either case, I have the ability to install that from the manifest file itself. All right, let me pop back over. And I got one more question in the queue. It's a little help for information. He's talking about on-the-fly validation. All right. So now that I have an event in the system, how do I actually use it? Well, there's actually quite a few things that we can do there. And we have an API set up in Windows that allows us to write and register and deregister and consume basically these events. And we're calling it the Eventing API. And it actually exists in the Win32 library called ADV API32. It's the Advanced API 32 DLL. And the methods that we're going to be dealing with are, naturally, you can read them here, allows us to register and deregister events, also to write a generic event or write a string, as well as transfer events, and then some of the more advanced things. For example, check to see if a particular provider is enabled. We actually used that method earlier to check to see if the event was actually in there. Well, in this last demo, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and now that we have that event, we're going to go ahead and see how we can wrap this API in a very lightweight .NET-based wrapper. Remember, this is a Win32 API. So we wrap it in a .NET wrapper that's going to allow us to actually consume that. Then once that's done, we're going to go ahead and see how we can actually consume this in our application. In other words, how we can actually check in our app that we need to raise the event and then view that it actually does work. So again, I'm going to go pop back over to my my demo here. I'm going to go ahead and shut the project down because we're going to start off with a new one. So we're going to open this guy up. Now what I've got here is a library that already exists. And the library that we have out there is the eventing API. Let's see, labs. Let me make sure I get to the right location here. Dinner Now Labs, server, start, source. Let's see, it was in solution. Now inside here, we have this little library called Eventing 6. And this is basically a library that contains a couple things for us. The first thing it contains is a API call class file that contains the definition for any of the enums or the header information, basically, if you will, of all of the calls that we are going to be making against that Advanced API 32 DLL. So here you can actually see the calls themselves. And we're just using a standard DLL import to bring those into the .NET world and then mapping them to whatever the objects happens to be. Now I then have an event log wrapper CS file that actually is a nice wrapper around all of that, provides us pure .NET based code so that I can call simple methods like write event or any of the other methods that we actually have in there. They're all represented inside of this wrapper class. So we can, for example, register and deregister our calls. This is available for you guys whenever you want to use it. This is pretty much the only thing that you'll need. And you can actually download this from Msdn so you can play around with it, even include it in your own applications. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm actually going to update my constants file with this stuff that's contained in the manifest here. So to do that, I'm going to pop back out to the command shell, and I'm going to use let's see, get to the right subdirectory here. I'm going to use a little utility that we wrote that you guys can play around with all you want to. We have this little utility called man-to-net, manifest to net. So what we're going to do is we're going to give it a couple files here, the source location, management, and then that's the manifest file that we're actually processing here. So what this is going to do, dinner now web events man, it's going to take this manifest file and it's actually going to convert it to a C# file for us so that we can then consume this. So the C# file I want to create is going to be in this location, web management. So it's going to take my manifest file and it's going to create this constant file, and I best guess how to spell it correctly. It's going to create a constant file. Ooh, I made a mistake. I spelled something wrong. And then it'll take a second for it to come back to me. It's not a sophisticated application. As a matter of fact, it's all the source code to the man2net file is included here. And let's see what I typed in wrong. Man2net start source solution dinner now.web management. Enter now web events. .man. Got to make sure you spell everything correctly for this tool. It's not too sophisticated, like I said. Try it again. And the location of the source. That figures. So I'm doing something wrong inside there. I don't see what I'm doing wrong. So that file should actually contain that. Let's go ahead and go to that location and maybe I can create it. Basically, all it's doing is it's going to parse that C# file or parse that XML file and create a C# code behind that. I think we can get around that. Kind of concerning that it's not doing that. Man to net. Anybody see what I did wrong in there? Missed E in management. Somebody says I missed E in management. Yep, I did. I sure did. All right. I love people that can see faster than I can. Management. Ah, much better. All done. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I have that spelling mistake corrected there. Now that I have that, I can actually go through and open up my project again.
So we actually need you to share out your desktop again.
Oh.
There we go.
Enter now web. Go up one. Enter now web management solution. Okay. So opening this solution again, here we can actually see the file that we just created, event constant CS. There you can see that's a new file, and that's actually added my duplicate user event down here at the bottom. So you can see that that's created that new event for me. And now all I need to do is go ahead and add some code to actually call this. Oops, there's my event here. Okay, what we're going to do now is go ahead and basically use our event helper here. And in our event helper, we're going to go ahead and call this method. So we'll just go down to the end down here. We'll add a new method. Static. So we're going to call this our write duplicate user error. And remember, it's going to take a parameter. So the parameter we're going to give it is called username. And then we're just going to call the event log and tell it to write our event. Now the event that we're going to be writing out is actually an instance of that duplicate user event. So I'm just going to use my eventing helper. Remember, I wrote that eventing helper and I added that event to it. And the enum for it, if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, is our duplicate user event. So that's the guy I just added. And then we'll just go ahead and pass in the additional parameter. Remember, this guy takes that parameter, so we need to pass that parameter into it. And as with all of these, it is actually a string array that we're passing in, but we're only going to deal with the first element. So I've just created a new method called writeDuplicateUserError that's going to allow me to actually call that, and it's going to go ahead and create the event based on the event that I created, passing in the parameter into it that I also created in the event template up above. So let's go ahead and build this. And again, it compiled successfully, so it's time to ship it apparently. So now I'm going to create, as I did that, that's actually created a new DLL for me called dinnernow.web.management.dll. I'm going to go ahead and take that DLL and I'm going to copy that into my other solution where we can actually test that. So we'll right mouse click and choose Explore. And we'll go up into our location of where we actually created that file. And that's under Dinner Now. It's under my lab section. We are in Start, Source, Solution. And that's the Dinner Now Web Management. Now inside here, it's actually compiled the Dinner Now Web Management. And it stuck that inside the bin directory. And we're only in debug, so that's the only one we're dealing with right now. And if I scroll this out here, we should be able to see our DLL in there. There's our Dinner Now Web Management DLL. So I'm just going to copy that guy. This is the new one that I just created. And we're going to paste that into our actual Dinner Now bin directory. So if I scroll back up to the top here, paste that right into there. This is where our application is. Let me just go ahead and paste that. And it says, yes, I want to replace it. Okay, so now I've done that. I've got the application, the new Dinner Now Web Management application, assembly out there. I can then go ahead and see if it actually works by opening up the actual Dinner Now website itself. In our case, we're opening up the Dinner Now server itself. So we have our server, start, and in the source directory here, we have our Dinner Now web solution. This is actually the actual client for the application. Now with the client for the application, I should just be able to go ahead and determine based on if the user is already in the system, that the user is there using the registration page. So in our registration page, here I have some code. And we have a method in here. This one that we're actually dealing with is actually going to be the log create user error page. Here we have basically we have a switch statement or a select case for you VBers that actually checks to see what's going on here. And here we have a duplicate user name. It was already checking to see that there was a duplicate user, and it simply displayed that. But what I really want to do is I want it to log that. So all I have to do now is go ahead and call my Dinner Now Web Management. Remember, that's all in that one assembly. And I have an event helper here. The event helper actually has that method that allows me to write an event, but notice that I have a new event there, write duplicate user error. And again, remember this guy takes a parameter so you can see its username. So if I just go ahead and pass in the username, it's going to go ahead and write that event out to the eventing, basically the event log. So if I build this, There we go. Built it successfully. I can go ahead and run out to the event viewer here. And let's go ahead and create that custom pane there. It's going to contain that new event. So we're going to check by source. Again, it's going to be our dinner now. The category is going to be registration. And we can hit OK. And it's asking for a view. We're going to go ahead and give it a name. Let's call this our dinner now. And, just give it a description, dinner now web events. So now I have a log, and you can see that there are no events stored in this. By the way, if I wanted to, I could go ahead and save this, export this, custom view, and then import it later on. If I exported this with this tool here, I could actually then include that with my setup files. And including that with my setup files, I could then deploy this automatically to anybody that was installing the services. So that's a real handy thing there. I'm going to go ahead and start the Dinner Now services up real quick. Now, starting up the services is going to allow me to go ahead and view this site. So I can bring up Internet Explorer here and navigate to the URL, which is fabricam.com/dinnernow. Navigating out to the site, I should be able to get to the registration page. So here we can see my site. And if I scroll over to the right here, there's a registration link. I'll go ahead and create a new user. It has a accept the terms thing in here for the site. We're not actually using credit card information, but we can if we wanted to. And I'm just going to create a new user. We'll call it William. And I'll create a password. And William at fabricam.com. And what is your name? And we'll give it an answer. So the username that we're using is called Bill. So I'll just go ahead and create this user. And it says your account has been successfully created. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and click register again. And that's going to take me back to the registration page. Actually, sign out first. And then register again. And again, I'm going to use the username Bill, or William. Now, an entirely different password, entirely different email address, and an entirely different question. When I click Submit, we're getting an error notification, and it says the user details you entered are already registered with Dinner Now. That you can see is automatically caught that. Now, that's the error message that the end user would see. However, if we go back to our event viewer and we do a refresh, you can see I now have a new error inside there that represents the error from the one that we actually created. So that gives us an option of adding our new events and processing our events from within the application without having to resort to doing the manual stuff. We've actually included it right within our application. All right, so let me pop back over to here. Finish out there we go. Finish out the summary. So here we saw we do have a few new mechanisms inside of Windows Longhorn for dealing with events. For example, creating event using simply modifying the manifest or actually creating it via an XML-based file. Compiling it and building it, we have a couple different options there. We can actually do it all from the command line, or we can actually build it right into our code. And then lastly, calling it from within our code allows us to basically add the events. It's a real simple call once we've added it, including extending out. You saw the man2net file, which took our manifest and actually converted it into a C# file to allow us to basically just include that right within our project, and then calling it from an intuitive .NET based interface. I do want to thank everybody for stopping out and watching this webcast. Don't forget we have several webcasts at Microsoft.com/webcasts. You can also go out to msdnevents.com, and there's a webcasts link on the left side where you can see all the webcasts that myself and all my teammates are actually doing. Send me feedback anytime you want. I prefer you send it via the blog. Sending it directly to my email address 99% of the time will actually get dumped into our spam filters, where if you send it information through my blogs, it typically gets right through to me. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Tracy. There's a couple questions in the queue. I will answer those while you guys are in the survey, though. Tracy?
Excellent. Thanks, Bill. I do want to remind everybody that for more information, they can print a PDF of today's session. To do that, you just want to go to the File menu in your upper navigation bar. Also, now is a good time to submit your questions into the Q&A panel. You just want to type them in and hit that Ask button. Also, please do take a moment to fill the survey out. I'm going to launch that here in just a moment. We really do appreciate any feedback you leave there for us. As a reminder for upcoming and previously recorded webcasts, you'll want to visit Microsoft.com/webcasts. You can go here to access this webcast, which will be available for download in about 24 hours. Now, if you have any webcast content ideas, something out there you'd like to see and you haven't yet, we'd love to hear from you. Please take note of this link here. And for anybody who's interested in receiving a free 14-day trial of Microsoft Office Live Meeting, you'll want to visit Microsoft.com/presentlive. And now here's that survey from the session today. Please follow the links provided to complete today's webcast evaluation. And Bill, is there any questions waiting there for you?
Actually, there is a couple of them. One of them pointed out the E in management. Thank you, Badger. That's much appreciated. The other one is someone is asking about where they can do these labcasts or these labs that I've been using as a demo machine. And actually you can go out to Msdn or Microsoft.com and actually simply do a search for it, or any other search engine for that matter. But most of them will typically you'll find there's a couple different ways you can do these labcasts. You can either do them as a labcast itself, which means that the lab is actually done by somebody else, and they can walk you through it, and you'll be doing yours at the same time. Or you could take them on your own, and that gives they basically give you 60 minutes or 90 minutes. I'm sorry, they up to time. They give you 90 minutes for you to go through these labcasts or these labs on your own. But if you just go out to msdn.com and do a search for the labcast or labs, whatever you want to call it, you should be able to find these. We actually call them virtual labs, so the keyword that you want to use is virtual lab. And not only do we have them on Longhorn, but we have, I would say, hundreds of these things available. And it doesn't require that you install any any software on your machine other than the simple plug-in control that actually goes into the browser. And they include lab manuals, and they even include presentations to allow you to go through and watch some of these at your own leisure. Let's see. Nicholas is asking, would it be possible to write in the app that monitors events similar to the W Event Viewer, but without having to pull for events? As a matter of fact, yes, you can. You don't necessarily have to pull for events. We actually have whenever you write an event to it, you can actually subscribe to those events and be notified of it. Off the top of my head, I can't think of what the URL is, but there's definitely a way you can do that where you actually become a subscriber to the event when it gets written. Not only does the log file get it, but you can actually respond to it as well. So yes, you can definitely do that. It's a subscriber-based model in that scenario. That's the only questions I have in the queue. I want to thank everybody for stopping out here, and we'll see you next time on whatever webcast I do next. Tracy?
Great. And with that, I do want to extend a very special thank you to you, Bill, for your presentation today. I also want to thank the audience for attending today's Msdn webcast. Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to conclude today's session. Thanks for joining us. You may now disconnect from the audio portion of today's presentation.